The Storm Order, a realm of tempests, its skies torn by lightning and its cliffs battered by endless winds. Among its greatest dynasties stands the Stormfang line, a name spoken with respect, fear, and awe across the 5 orders. The current patriarch, Verathos Stormfang, is a warrior of relentless will, who rose to power by striking down the tyrant who preceded him. The previous patriarch was a brute stronger than any challenger, despised by all, yet unopposed until Verathos invoked the trial by combat. In a duel of sky and flame, he ended the tyrant's reign and claimed the mantle of patriarch. His victory restored the honor of the Storm Order, and his first decree was to name his younger brother, Veldora Stormfang, to the Council of Elders. Where Verathos is the blade of the dynasty, Veldora is its shield. An elder dragon, longest-serving member of the council, he is revered for his wisdom, patience, and unwavering loyalty to his family. Though he never sought the throne, his influence is undeniable, his name etched into the laws and traditions that keep Storm Order steady. Yet the Stormfang bloodline is not without scandal. Veldora's wife, Nimira Stormfang, was born of the Shadow Order. Once, she was among Shadow's most gifted assassins, trained to pierce the hearts of Storm Knights and unravel their secrets. But Shadow betrayed her long before she was captured, her own mother slain by the order she served, her life poisoned by cruelty and mistrust. When her attempt to strike at Storm failed, she was taken alive and interrogated. Nimira revealed all she knew of Shadow's hidden blades. But rather than execution, the patriarch offered her a chance at new life. The elders refused her, fearing corruption, yet Veldora stepped forward. He took her hand, not only in guardianship but in marriage. Against all odds, a union of Storm and Shadow was forged. For years, assassins tried to end her life. They failed, time and again, until even the Shadow Order abandoned their attempts. Her defiance became legend. From this union was born Alex Stormfang, a child destined to walk between 2 worlds. At 10 years old, his name is already whispered in the corridors of Stormspire. To most, he is but a boy, but to his parents, he is the heir to 2 legacies. Veldora and Nimira tested him constantly as he grew, fearing he might be talentless or worse, a disappointment to the Stormfang name. They watched his every move and were astonished. Alex proved gifted in ways subtle yet undeniable, sharp memory, quick reflexes, and a mind that grasped patterns and strategies far beyond his years. He absorbed knowledge as easily as others breathed, passing every trial his parents set before him. What he lacked in raw power, he compensated with wit. What he lacked in age, he carried in awareness. To Veldora, this was the mind of a leader. To Nimira, it was the spirit of a survivor. At 11 years of age, most dragonborn heirs were still children indulged by their parents. Too young for discipline, too old to be treated as hatchlings. But Alex Stormfang was no ordinary child, and his father, Veldora Stormfang, had no intention of treating him like one. "You will build your foundation now," his father told him, voice like rolling thunder. "Your first task is to take a humanoid form. If you can stand on 2 feet, even clumsy and unsteady, it will be progress. Without this, the rest of your lessons mean nothing." Most children of the orders did not begin transformation training until their 14th year. But Veldora was an elder dragon. He knew too well the price of delay. A dragon who could not shift swiftly into humanoid form was vulnerable, crippled in combat against mortal magi. So the boy began early. Alex struggled at first. The power of the storm ran in his blood. But control required patience, focus, and endless practice. His parents tested him daily, demanding effort until exhaustion. 4 months later, Alex stood before them in a form no one had expected so soon. The boy's body shimmered, bones and sinew bending, scales folding inward until he emerged upright. A dragon with a human frame, draconic eyes burning bright, horns crowning his head, and a tail swaying behind him. Veldora's stern face softened with pride. "Good," he said, placing a massive hand upon his son's shoulder. "Very good." Alex smirked to himself, though he kept it hidden. The months passed. The training continued. At the end of his first year of practice, Alex stood taller, sharper. When his father looked upon him, he saw a form nearly perfected. Only his draconic eyes and his horns remained. The tail had vanished, absorbed into the elegance of his humanoid frame. The halls of the Storm Order whispered his name. No child had ever come so close to perfect form so young. Elders gossiped in disbelief. Knights scowled with envy. And Veldora Stormfang walked with his head held higher than ever, the pride of a father and an elder radiating like a storm before dawn. When Alex returned to his chambers that evening, his father awaited him with parchment in hand. "Your schedule," Veldora said firmly. "You've proven your body can shape itself. Now your mind must match it. From tomorrow you will study the history of the Order of Storm, literature of the 5 orders, the basics of combat, and the theory of magic." Alex bowed, accepting. But before his father turned to leave, curiosity gnawed at him. "Father," he asked, tilting his head, "why is it so important to shift into a human form? You've shown me what dragons can do. From the sky you could burn everything. Why trouble yourself with walking as a man?" Veldora paused. Slowly he turned, his eyes gleaming like lightning under cloud. "It is important because strength is not enough," he said. "Imagine this. You are a great dragon in your true form, fighting a human mage. He slips into your blind spots, striking where your claws cannot reach, where your flame cannot sear. Each spell cuts at your wings, at your heart, and you cannot react fast enough. That, Alex, is how legends die." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only his son could hear. "It is not simply about the ability to shift. It is about speed, mastery, to switch forms without thought, dragon and man, storm and lightning in an instant. In your true form, you can crush armies. In your humanoid form, you can strike a single foe with precision. A warrior who can wield both without hesitation is invincible." The elder dragon turned and left, his steps heavy with purpose, leaving Alex alone with his thoughts. The boy's eyes narrowed, the weight of his father's words sinking into him. To master the storm, I must master both halves of myself. And so, the trials of Alex Stormfang's childhood began in earnest. The sun had barely crested the cliffs of Stormspire when Nymeria Stormfang roused her son. "Up," she said, her shadow-touched eyes watching him with a softness she rarely showed others. "Breakfast, bath, then lessons." "Discipline, Alex. It will build you as much as strength." Alex groaned, rubbing sleep from his eyes, but obeyed. He had long since learned that his mother's words were not suggestions. The days fell into rhythm. Morning meals, cleansing baths, then hours spent in study. He learned the histories of the Storm Order, its dynasties, its wars, its triumphs and failings. He copied literature from Frost and Stone, recited fire epics, and debated passages of philosophy from shadow texts. By afternoon, he drilled in sword forms, footwork, and strikes with wooden blades. Evenings closed with lectures in magic theory, the weaving of energies, the balance of flow, the dangers of corruption. For weeks he worked without complaint, mind sharp, body weary, spirit hardening. He knew his father expected nothing less than perfection, and his mother silently measured every stumble. But one day, as he left the training yard, Alex found his father waiting at the gate. The air around Veldora Stormfang crackled faintly, as though even his presence carried the echo of thunder. "Son," Veldora rumbled, "I will be taking part of your combat training from now on. You will continue your sword practices, but when you finish, you come to me." Alex bowed his head. "Yes, father." That night, Alex learned what intense training was. Veldora stood before him in a circle carved with storm runes, arms crossed. "Today, you learn not basic combat, but storm combat. Sword and shield make you a knight, but lightning makes you a storm dragon." He raised one hand and sparks crawled across his palm. "It begins with a spark, not from breath, not from wings, but from within. You will not channel your power outward as flame. You will ignite your body, your blood, your bones, until lightning lives in you." The training was brutal. For weeks, Alex left the yard trembling, his muscles burning with exhaustion. His father's voice echoed over him again and again. "Focus! Feel the storm in your chest. Do not force it. Breathe, listen, then command." A month passed before it came. The spark. One evening, while rain lashed the fortress walls, Alex felt it in his core, a flicker of energy that answered his will. Sparks danced across his fingertips, faint but alive. His eyes widened as the storm finally obeyed him. Across from him, his father smiled. Not a small smile, but one of fierce pride. Yes, that's it, my boy. That is the spark. Now we shape it. From that moment, Veldora's lessons intensified. Day after day, he drilled his son mercilessly. Sparks grew into crawling streaks of lightning along Alex's arms. A week later, they reached his shoulders, crackling across his torso. 2 weeks more, and his entire body glowed with faint arcs of stormlight. By year's end, Alex stood before his father in humanoid form, lightning coursing across his skin in steady waves. His horns shimmered faintly, his eyes glowed like stormfire. He clenched his fists, and sparks leapt between them. Veldora's chest swelled with pride. He placed a heavy hand on his son's shoulder and spoke words that would echo in his memory for the rest of his life. That's it, my boy. Show them. Show them what a true dragon can do. The boy bowed, breath ragged but eyes alight with fire. He had endured. He had awakened. And with every lesson, he grew closer to the storm that bore his name. The day came when Veldora and Nemira judged the walls of Stormspire too fragile to contain their son's growth. Too many eyes followed him, already elders whispered, knights glaring with envy, servants gossiping of sparks and shadows in the training yards. So one morning, beneath a sky split with lightning, Alex took wing beside his parents. Together they flew beyond the cliffs, leaving Stormspire behind, soaring over valleys and rivers until they reached a lonely mountain range where no watchful eyes could intrude. There, amid jagged peaks and hollow caverns, his training entered a new stage. Your spark is no longer enough, Veldora rumbled as they landed upon a barren ridge. Now you must breathe as a dragon does, not only in your true form, but in every form. Alex's chest tightened with anticipation. To wield the breath of dragons was to claim their heritage, to become more than just a child. It was the mark of adulthood. The lessons were merciless. Day after day, Veldora commanded him to draw Stormfire into his lungs and unleash it. At first, Alex choked. His throat seared, his chest ached, and only coughing sparks escaped. But Veldora was patient and relentless, guiding him to channel mana through every fiber of his body, to shape breath not as exhalation but as controlled eruption. In draconic form, he roared bolts of lightning that split the mountain air. In humanoid form, he clenched his fists and let Stormfire surge forth in controlled bursts, learning precision over chaos. Alex stood proud. He could unleash the Tempest breath with precision, striking boulders into ash and carving jagged scars across the cliffs. In him, the storm was no longer a whisper, it was a voice. But lightning was not his only inheritance. While Veldora forged storm into his son's blood, Nemira worked in subtler arts, honing the darkness that dwelled within him. Lightning is blunt force, she told him one evening as shadows stretched long across the peaks. But black lightning is art. It is storm-made cunning, shadow-made fury. To wield it, you must not simply command power, you must integrate it. Her training was harsher still. Shadow weaves around Alex like living serpents as she forced him to summon lightning through them, binding storm to night. Again and again, the arcs flared out of control, explosions tearing into stone, shockwaves hurling him to the ground. His arms bled from backlash burns, his lungs rattled with smoke, his mana faltered under the strain. Yet Nemira's eyes glowed with fierce approval. Again, she said, control the storm or it will consume you. Day after day, he tried. And though he did not master it, he endured. He learned to hold the lightning a moment longer before it burst. He learned to shape it into jagged bolts instead of chaotic blasts. It was imperfect, wild, and dangerous, but it was progress. On his 13th birthday, Alex stood atop the highest peak, chest heaving, arcs of silver and black dancing along his arms. His father watched, arms crossed with pride. His mother stood near, her expression sharp but softer than any other would ever see. Veldora's voice boomed across the cliffs. Your Tempest breath is true. You wield it with precision. That is the mark of a Stormfang. Nemira stepped closer, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. And your black lightning, it is not yet mastered, but it lives in you. You are its vessel. In time, it will bend to you or break you. The boy bowed his head, lightning flickering across his eyes. He was no longer the uncertain child who once struggled to shape his form. At 13, Alex Stormfang stood as Storm and Shadow both, a legacy forged on a mountain peak, his codex recording every breath, every spark, every struggle. And still, his trials had only just begun. The fire crackled softly, the smell of roasted meat mingling with the sharp scent of rain that still clung to their cloaks. Alex sat across from his parents, his plate balanced in his lap, though his mind wandered as often as his eyes. Veldora and Nemira had been unusually quiet that evening, not stern, not sharp, but watchful, as if measuring the moment. When their meal was finished, Nemira leaned forward, her shadow-touched eyes gleaming in the firelight. "There is a goblin den at the foot of this hill," she said, her voice even, deliberate. 20 of them. Filthy things. They nest in caves, raid caravans, breed like vermin. She reached into her cloak and drew forth a vial, faintly glowing with a warm ember light. She set it before her son. "This," she continued, "is vital flame recovery, a healing skill. Within the week, I need you to absorb it fully. Once it is bound to you, your wounds will close, your flesh will knit, not instantly, not without cost, but strong enough for what comes next." Alex picked up the vial, its warmth seeping into his palm. He looked from it to his mother, then to the plain wooden box his father placed beside the fire. Veldora's massive hand rested upon it for a moment before sliding it toward him. "Inside," his father said, voice like distant thunder, "you will find your first blade and armor, forged to fit your frame. Steel, nothing more, nothing less. Enough to defend, enough to strike. But it is not the steel that matters. It is the one who wields it." Nemira's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Eradicate the goblins, Alex. Go into their den, strike them down, and return to us at the top of this hill. This is your first true task. Not a lesson, not a drill. A mission." Veldora's gaze met his son's. Fierce pride shone in the elder dragon's eyes, tempered by expectation. "We believe you can do this. That is why we're sending you." Alex felt the weight of the vial in his hand, the unseen gravity of the box beside him, and the storm in his chest stirring. His first hunt, his first trial beyond training. Before he could speak, his mother leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper edged in steel. "Remember, Alex," Nemira said, eyes glinting in the firelight. "Shadow is your ally. Do not forget that." He nodded, his throat tight, but his spirit alight with determination. Tomorrow, he would descend into darkness. Tomorrow, he would test Storm and Shadow against blood and bone. Tomorrow, Alex Stormfang would step beyond childhood and into the first measure of what he was destined to become. The vial of emberlight burned in Alex's hand long after his parents left him next to the fire. That night, he drank it. The moment the liquid touched his tongue, his veins seared as though molten iron coursed through him. He collapsed to the ground, clutching his chest, every breath fire and smoke. The first day was agony. His body rejected the foreign essence, burning scars reopening as though they were fresh wounds. He lay shivering, sweating, his flesh aching with every heartbeat. But the storm in him endured. His will did not break. The second day brought strange warmth. The fire inside him no longer devoured, but began to cradle. His cuts healed more swiftly, his fatigue dulled faster with rest. Yet each recovery left him drained, hungry, and trembling with exhaustion. By the third day, the fire and storm within his blood no longer fought. They pulsed in rhythm. The ember of vital flame recovery fused with his veins, leaving a faint warmth in his chest that throbbed when he willed it. He flexed his hands and felt it, a healing ember alive inside him. At dawn, clad in his new armor, sword at his hip, Alex descended the hill. His parents watched from above, silent and proud. He never looked back. The goblin den stank of blood, rot, and damp earth. Voices shrieked and bickered within, crude weapons clattering as they fought over scraps. Alex's shadow sense flared. The den was a hive of movement, each goblin's malice sharp and ugly in his perception. He breathed deep, calling sparks to his arms. The storm answered. His first hunt had begun. The first goblin fell before it understood it was being hunted, Alex's sword carved through its chest, lightning bursting along the steel. The others shrieked in alarm. 4 rushed him, crude spears jabbing. Alex stepped aside, sliding through shadow as Namira had taught him. 1 spear passed through empty air. Alex reappeared at the goblin's flank, cutting it down. Sparks danced across his blade as he swung, storm arcs burning flesh with each strike. But the numbers pressed him. A club smashed against his shoulder, another spear cut his thigh. Pain flared hot, and the ember in his chest answered. Warmth surged, flesh knitting slowly even as blood ran. The goblins gaped as the wound closed before their eyes. Vital flame recovery. Alex whispered through clenched teeth and struck again. He roared, releasing tempest breath, a surge of storm fire from his chest. Lightning and flame erupted, burning 5 goblins to ash. The cavern shook, smoke filling the air. But the survivors, nearly a dozen, rushed all at once, shrieking, desperate to overwhelm. For a moment, Alex faltered under the press of bodies. Cuts opened across his arms. Blood stung his eyes. His chest heaved. And then instinct rose. Shadows coiled at his feet, his eyes glowing with stormlight. Black lightning. He thrust out his hand. The cavern exploded with dark lightning, jagged arcs of storm and shadow tearing through goblin ranks. The blast consumed 3 instantly, but Alex screamed as the power tore his flesh in return. His armor cracked, his arm blistered, his knees buckled. For a heartbeat, he nearly collapsed. But the ember in his chest pulsed again, flesh sealed, breath steadied. Not whole, not painless, but enough. Rising, Alex struck down the last 2 goblins with blade and spark, his body ragged, his aura burning. When silence fell, the den reeked of charred flesh, shadow smoke, and storm ozone. When Alex emerged from the cavern at dusk, his armor was cracked, his sword blackened, his face smeared with blood and ash. Yet his eyes blazed with storm fire, and his chest glowed faintly with ember light. He climbed the hill where his parents waited, each step heavy but unbroken. "Done!" he rasped. Veldora's booming laugh shook the mountain. Namira's smile was small but radiant. Their son had returned, not as a trainee, but as a dragon who had faced darkness and lived. When Alex reached the peak, he dropped his bloodied sword beside the fire and pulled the cracked armor from his body piece by piece. His arms trembled from exhaustion. His chest heaved with every breath. The steel clattered hollow against the stone as though shedding the last weight of the goblin's den. Namira was at his side before the sound faded. Silent, graceful as shadow, she drew water warmed by the fire and began to cleanse the blood and soot from his skin. Her hands were gentle, though her eyes searched every mark with the precision of a hunter. Cuts closed into faint pink lines. Bruises were already fading, tender but healing. Where black lightning had scorched his flesh, faint ember light glowed the mark of vital flame recovery at work. Slowly, steadily, it was restoring what the storm had torn apart. Namira's sharp gaze softened. She set the cloth aside and drew her son into an embrace, holding him close against her silks. For a moment, Alex froze, unaccustomed to such warmth from his shadow-born mother. Then he leaned into it, weary but proud. Her voice was low, meant only for him. "I am proud of you, Alex," she whispered into his ear. "You did not falter. You carried shadow with you, and you returned stronger. My sun, my storm, and my dusk. You are more than I could have ever dreamed." The words sank deeper than any blade, deeper than any lesson. For all the pain, for all the blood spilled in the cavern, Alex felt the ember in his chest glow brighter than ever. Not only because of vital flame recovery, but because of the pride in his mother's voice and the storm of purpose rising in his heart. Long after the fire had burned low and Namira had led Alex to rest, Veldora remained seated upon the stone ridge. His massive frame was still, but his eyes glowed faintly in the dark, lightning shimmering across his arms. He had said little when Alex returned, letting Namira take the boy into her arms. He had watched instead, watched the way his son's steps faltered but did not break. Watched the way his chest rose and fell, scarred but steady, emberlight flickering in his veins. Watched the way his eyes no longer held the innocence of a child, but the quiet fire of one who had faced death and stood again. Veldora thought of his own youth, of the storms he had faced, the trials that had hardened him into elder and shield. He remembered when lightning first bled from his claws, uncontrolled, furious. He remembered when he first took the oath of the Order, when his own father's gaze had weighed heavy upon him, and yet his son had reached farther, faster. At 13, Alex had done what many knights could not claim until their late years of training. He had shifted early, awakened the storm, endured shadow, survived the crucible of a den filled with 20 foes alone. The elder dragon's chest swelled, pride mixing with the weight of duty, for he knew what such progress meant. The boy name would not remain whispered much longer. Elders would hear of this, knights would watch him closely, rivals would take note. Enemies both within and beyond the orders would hunger to test him. He closed his eyes, exhaling slowly, thunder rumbling faintly in his chest. "My son, you are ready for more than I had planned, but I will not shield you from it. Storms do not grow in still skies. They grow where the winds clash, where lightning strikes, where the world trembles. That is where you will be forged." His gaze turned toward the horizon, where distant storms split the dark with silver fire. He bared his teeth in a quiet, fierce smile. And when you are forged, the world will learn what it means to face a true Stormfang. Sleep did not come easily that night. Though his body lay heavy beneath the furs, his mind refused to rest. The images of the goblin den played again and again behind his eyes, the shrieks, the smell of scorched flesh, the crackle of storm fire consuming stone. Alex turned onto his side, staring at the faint glow of embers in the night. His hand traced the scars that had already begun to fade under the embers' warmth. Vital flame recovery was working, but it could not erase the memories. I survived, but I could have been better. He remembered the way he had faltered when the press of goblins surged. Too many at once, and his blade arm slowed. A club had struck his shoulder before he sensed it. If not for the healing skill, he might have bled out then and there. I relied too heavily on instinct. I felt the shadows, but I didn't use them fully. If I had stepped deeper, I could have cut from the blind spot. Instead, I wasted movement. And then there was the black lightning. He clenched his fist, recalling the searing pain that had torn through his arm when he unleashed it. The goblins had died, yes, but so nearly had he. It was too wild. I lost control. If more enemies had remained, I wouldn't have stood back up. That power will kill me if I don't master it. He breathed slowly, forcing the storm in his chest to settle. In the quiet, he admitted to himself what he had not said aloud. I am not invincible. I am not yet ready. Yet beneath the admission came another truth, fierce and bright. But I will be. He thought of his father's lessons, precision, mastery, speed. He thought of his mother's whispers, shadow as ally, silence as weapon. He thought of the pride in their eyes when he returned from the den. They believe in me. I will not make them liars. I will not disappoint them. Alex closed his eyes at last. And though the goblin's screams lingered at the edge of memory, another vision burned stronger. A storm at dusk, lightning and shadow entwined, waiting to be shaped by his hand. When his breathing steadied and sleep finally claimed him, Nemira draped a cloak across his shoulders and lingered beside the fire. Her eyes, sharp as daggers in daylight, now softened as she studied his resting form. Scars fading, chest rising and falling with new rhythm, lightning and ember both still flickering beneath his skin. She turned her gaze toward Veldora, who stood at the mouth of the cavern, arms folded, staring out into the storm-swept horizon. For a time, she watched him in silence, listening to the rumble of thunder that always seemed to echo in his chest. Then she spoke, her voice low and measured. He reflects already. Veldora did not turn, though his eyes narrowed faintly. You heard him? Nemira inclined her head. I felt it. The shadows clung to his thoughts. He turned them over, dissected his failures. He is not basking in triumph, he is dissecting weakness. That, my love, is rare. At last, Veldora looked back, his eyes glowing faint with stormlight. A warrior who hunts his own flaws will never stop growing. His voice was a growl of pride, tempered by the gravity of what it implied. Nemira rose, her cloak whispering across the stone. It is dangerous, too. He already demands more of himself than most would survive. If he pushes too hard too soon, even vital flame recovery will not save him. Veldora's jaw tightened, his gaze drifting back to their son. And yet, we cannot shelter him. The world will not wait for him to ripen. The orders will watch. The elders will circle. Our enemies will whisper. He must be sharpened, Nemira, or he will be broken. Her lips curved in a faint, almost bitter smile. Storm and shadow both in him. He could grow into something no dragon has ever been before. Or he could burn himself out before his wings are fully spread. For a moment, silence hung between them, the weight of two legacies colliding in the body of one boy. Then Nemira stepped closer, her hand brushing against Veldora's arm. Then we guide him. We harden him where he is fragile, slow him when he runs too fast. He will not break, not while we still breathe. Veldora's thunderous chest rose, then fell. Slowly he nodded. A storm is only as strong as the sky it's born in. He has both of us. That will be enough. Nemira's eyes lingered once more on her son, her whisper carrying only to her husband. And if it is not, then may the world tremble before him. The days that followed the Goblin Den trial were gentler, though no less purposeful. Veldora and Nemira allowed Alex to rest, yet rest in their household was never idleness. At dawn, Veldora would sit with him beneath the open sky, their silhouettes framed against storm clouds rolling in from the sea. They did not train with sword or lightning, not yet, but spoke of breathing, posture, and presence. The elder dragon taught him how to steady his heart, how to let storm and ember pulse together without clashing. Power is not only in force, Veldora reminded him, watching as Alex inhaled deeply, storm sparks rising across his skin. It is in control. A storm that rages uncontrolled destroys even its wielder. A storm guided by will reshapes the world. By afternoon, Nemira took her turn. Her lessons were quieter, patient, but piercing. She had Alex sit across from her in the dimness of their cavern shelter, lamps low, shadows long. She asked him to recount the battle, not only what he did, but what he felt. Where fear had struck, where rage had broken through, where the shadows had stirred without his calling. She listened without judgment, her fingers tapping softly against the table as his words grew steadier. When he faltered, she leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. You saw your flaws and spoke them aloud. That is strength, Alex, but remember, flaws are not chains. They are doors. Walk through them, and they will lead you to mastery. In the evenings, the family gathered together by the fire. For once, there was no sparring, no drilling, no lessons carved into exhaustion. Instead, there was food venison roasted over crackling flame, bread brought from a nearby village, and drinks made from fruits. Alex would sit between his parents, sometimes too tired to speak, sometimes peppering them with questions. Veldora's laughter rolled like thunder when the boy mimicked his old war stories. Nemira's rare smile surfaced when Alex teased her about the way shadows seemed to follow her cloak like pets. On the third evening, as the fire burned low, Nemira reached out and brushed his hair back, studying his face. You are healing quickly, she murmured. The ember works well in you. No scars remain, Alex grinned faintly. Then I fought well enough for the ember to prove itself. Her eyes softened, and she leaned down to kiss his brow, a gesture she almost never allowed herself. Veldora rumbled in amusement, shaking his head. Do not grow too proud yet, boy. The goblins were but the first stone in a mountain. Greater trials will come and soon. Alex looked at them both, the warmth of firelight mingling with the ember's glow in his chest. For all the blood and pain of the den, for all the weight of expectations, in that moment he felt like their son, a son bound by storm, shadow, and love. By the week's end, Alex's body bore no scars, only strength. His father judged him ready. His mother agreed. And so the lessons grew harsher once more. They took him to a canyon carved by ancient lightning, its walls blackened and scarred, shadows pooling deep within its cracks. There, storm and darkness clashed, the perfect crucible for what he must learn. Veldora stood with arms crossed, thunder simmering in his chest. The storm is your birthright. The shadow is your inheritance. But you have been wielding them apart. From now on, you will bind them. Storm without shadow is loud, reckless. Shadow without storm is frail, unseen. Together, they become something the world has never faced. Nemira's gaze fixed on him, sharp as a blade. Black lightning is the first key the storm sharpened by Shadow. It nearly killed you once. Now you will master it, or it will master you. The days that followed were brutal. At Veldora's command, Alex summoned lightning through his body, then forced it into the shadows that pooled at his feet. The energies bucked and screamed against each other, arcs bursting uncontrolled, shadows writhing like serpents. Each attempt ended in backlash, burns up his arms, the taste of iron in his mouth, his knees cracking stone when he fell. At Nymera's demand, he shaped that chaos into form. She struck at him without warning, her daggers of shadow flashing in and out of sight. He was forced to release black lightning in controlled bursts, striking only when she left him no other path. Most times it detonated too wide, scorching rock and nearly searing himself. But sometimes it snapped into a precise bolt, faster and darker than anything he had called before. "Again!" his mother's voice echoed. "Stand up!" his father thundered. He rose every time, teeth gritted, the ember in his chest stitching torn flesh just enough for him to continue. On the 12th day, in the heart of the canyon, it happened. Veldora loosed a storm bolt toward him. Nymera hurled a wave of shadow to engulf him. Alex's instincts screamed one force would burn him, the other would smother him. But instead of flinching, he drew them both into himself. Lightning arced down his spine. Shadows wrapped his arms. For a heartbeat, he thought he would shatter. Then he roared and released. A jagged spear of black lightning tore forth, precise and devastating, striking the canyon wall. The explosion rocked the ground, carving a wound of storm fire into the black stone. The power was still painful, his muscles trembling, his chest burning, but it was controlled. For the first time, he had chosen the shape of the Storm Shadow Union, not merely endured it. When the echoes faded, Veldora's grin spread wide, thunder booming in his laughter. "Yes, that is the storm I wanted to see!" Nymera's smile was quieter but fiercer. She stepped close, her hand pressing lightly to his scorched shoulder. "Now it is yours, Alex. Black lightning no longer rules you. You are beginning to rule it." Alex fell to his knees, exhausted, but his eyes burned bright with storm fire edged in shadow. He had crossed another threshold. The storm had broken the night before, leaving the canyon floor slick with rain and mist rising in thin curls. Veldora and Nymera led Alex into the low hills beyond, where forests grew dense and shadows stretched long. It was not a dungeon nor a den, but wild land where monsters prowled freely. They stopped at the edge of a clearing, the grass trampled and claw-marked. Nymera knelt, touching the ground, her shadow curling across the prints. "Wolves," she said simply. "At least a dozen. They hunt as one. Quick, coordinated, merciless if you stumble." Her gaze turned to her son. "This is where you test black lightning. Precision, not destruction. One bolt wasted, and the pack will tear you down." Veldora's deep voice rumbled beside her. "No guidance this time. No intervention. Wolves do not wait for mistakes. They kill you for them." Alex's chest tightened, but he nodded. His sword felt heavy at his hip, his armor still carrying the marks of the goblin den. He breathed deep, letting storm and ember pulse in rhythm. The shadows around him stretched faintly, as though eager. The growls came first low, rumbling from the trees. Then shapes slipped from the mist, one after another. Yellow eyes gleamed. A pack of 13 wolves emerged, fangs bared, circling him in tightening arcs. The first wolf lunged. Alex's sword flashed, stormlight trailing as steel met fur and flesh. Sparks erupted, the beast collapsing with a yelp. But even before it hit the ground, two more bounded in from opposite sides. Alex spun, shadows clutching his feet as he stepped sideways into darkness, reappearing a pace away as both wolves snapped at empty air. He slashed, catching one across the muzzle, but the second crashed into his shoulder, knocking him to the ground. Teeth snapped at his throat. He shoved his hand forward. "Black lightning!" The canyon lit with jagged dark arcs. The wolf was thrown back, body convulsing before it stilled. The air reeked of ozone and char. Alex staggered to his feet, arms smoking, pain searing through his bones. But unlike before, he held steady. The lightning had obeyed. The pack howled, furious. They surged together. Alex fought like storm and shadow woven as one. Tempest breath seared three in a line, fire and lightning burning through their charge. Shadow movement slipped him past snapping jaws, his sword cleaving into another's spine. When two pinned him at once, he let black lightning lance outward, not wild, not consuming, but a spear that pierced both and left them twitching in silence. The pain was still sharp, his muscles still burned with backlash, but he was in control. Every strike chosen, every arc willed. At last, only one wolf remained the alpha, scarred and larger than the rest. It circled him warily, lips curling back in a snarl. Alex tightened his grip, storm gathering in his chest, shadows lacing his arms. The wolf lunged. Alex stepped through shadow, appearing at its flank. His sword struck first, then black lightning followed, precise and merciless. The alpha fell, smoke rising from its body. The clearing was silent. 13 wolves lay still. Alex stood among them, chest heaving, his body aching but unbroken. Black lightning sparked faintly across his shoulders, then faded, leaving only the steady ember in his chest and the storm fire in his eyes.